Good morning, students. Good morning, students. Can you hear me? Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. So it seems students are joining in late. Still we have 13 participants. Let's give us a couple of minutes to join in. Please contact your friends and ask them to join the lecture. I hope you can see my screen now. Am I correct? Yes. Can someone confirm whether you can see my screen? Yes, okay. So today we are straightforwardly moving into the trade-off and production probability curves. That was the part that we were unable to complete on the last lecture. So as I remember, we completed up to this particular example, right? We did this example last week, right? Yes or no? Please respond. Did we do this example last week or no? I'm waiting for your response. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So today we can start with this trade-off and production probability curve. So first of all, we need to know what is this production probability curve as well as what we mean by trade-off. So trade-off is a situation, or in other words, we can say it as a situational decision that involves diminishing or maybe losing one quality or one quantity or one property of a set or design in return of gain in other aspects. So we are basically diminishing or maybe losing a particular quality or a quantity or a property in order to gain another profit or maybe another aspect of return. So what it simply means is we are basically losing some quality or maybe some quantity or a property in order to gain another quality or another aspect in return. It can be either a quality in return, it can be either a quantity in return, or maybe a property in return. So we are losing one property or a quantity or a quality in order to gain another quantity or quality or a property. So that is what we call as a trade-off. That is a situational decision. For example, we can say in most of these construction firms, they are deciding which projects to be proceed with and which projects to be not proceed. So this way of thinking basically emphasizes that whenever an economic decision is made, there is a trade-off between the use of one resource for one or more alternative uses. So always in this construction firms or construction industry, we have this trade-off decisions. It basically gives us, or it basically gives us a chance to decide or trade-off between between the use of one resource for one or more alternative uses. So whether we are using this particular resource only for this particular site, or we are using that particular resource for more than one site. So in economics, the economist basically uses a term in order to highlight this particular scenario. So to highlight this dilemma, economist refers to the concept of opportunity cost. We call it as opportunity cost. What it means by the opportunity cost is the value of the alternative foregone by choosing a particular activity. So by choosing a particular activity, what is the value of the alternative foregone? So what is the loss we gain by choosing another activity? That is what we call as the opportunity cost. So let's say we have, for an example, let's say we have two ways of doing a particular thing. So by selecting a one way of doing that particular thing, what is the opportunity cost in the sense, what is the cost that is foregone by not selecting the other method? The value of the alternative foregone by choosing a particular activity. That is what we call as the opportunity cost. Are we clear on that scenario? Any questions? Do they have anything to be clarified on this trade-off and the opportunity cost? Still, we haven't discussed regarding the production probability curve. Yes. Any questions, guys? Anything that you need to clarify? Please confirm whether you have anything or not. All clear? Am I audible for you? I'd like to hear your answers or maybe see your answers through the chat. Please engage with the lecture. Okay, if it is not clear, just let me know. And the one student has confirmed it is clear. I'm moving forward, assuming that it is clear for you. So let's move on to an example to check whether you have got the idea here. So here we have three options. Let's say you have three options to be selected among, for you want to do in a weekend. Let's say for an example, these are the three options that you can select for a particular day. Either you can go out to a 1 hour concert and pay us $200 for the ticket, or else you can work as a salesman and earn $300 per hour. Option 3 is working as a tutor and earning $100 per hour. So what is the full cost of attending the concert? So you have decided to attend the concert. So what is the full cost of attending the concert? Is it only $200 or do we have any other first? Can you try to do it? Try to work it out and put your answers in the chat. Okay, we got an answer, very quick answer from Nilaksha or Nilaksha. What about others? Can I see some more answers? Is it Nilaksha or Nilaksha? Answer Nilaksha. Okay. We got the same answer from Sanjay as well. But I must say both of those answers are not the correct answer apparently. The alternative foregone in the sense, let's say choosing option number 1, you will lose the option number 2 as well as option number 3. Yes, that's correct. But still, you won't be able to do option number 2 and option number 3 at the same time. You get my point? Can I know the name of this person?
Sorry, sir, it is mistake. My name is Insha.
Okay, okay. Your name is not given in this platform. It's okay. So why did you get a negative answer here? I mean, how you calculated it?
Sir, it is first not chosen minus chosen.
Sorry, can you repeat it?
First not chosen minus chosen. The full cost.
Not chosen minus chosen. Okay, so what do you prepared as not chosen here? 100.
100 plus 30.
Okay, so again, okay.
Subtract 200, sir.
Okay. So I'm sorry to say it's not the correct answer as well. Actually, what you all of you have gone through is like, you know, you have chosen option number 1, yes. Instead of option number 2 or option number 3, at the same time you can't do both options. So when calculating the opportunity cost or when calculating the full cost of attending the concert, you can't add these two values together. You can't add 130 together because you can't do both option 2 and option 3 at the same time. So what others have also done is they have basically calculated 200 plus 330 plus 100. So that's how they have get the answer of 330. Okay, we have answer of 100 here. Have you got the answer, Nitmi? Nothing. Have you got that answer? The 100. Okay. 200 minus 100. So by attending the concert, yes, of course. Yes, Sandakaram, you got the correct answer. Let me, by attending the question, anyway, you have to pay $200. So in case you are when you have decided to attend the concert, you are losing either $300, sorry, $30 or $100. So among those two alternatives, when we calculate the opportunity cost, we are calculating only the greater loss. So we are calculating for the $100 in that time. So anyway, either you can choose option number 2 or option number 3. The maximum loss you can have is option number 3. By omitting option number 3, you are losing $100 per hour. But by attending the option number 1, you have to pay $200. So it's not 200 minus 100. Instead, it should be 200 plus 100 because this is also a cost. Option number 1, anyway, the cost is $200. By choosing option number 1, you need to omit either option number 2 or option number 3. Among these two options, the highest value or the greatest loss is option number 3. So by attending option number 1, you need to pay this $200 plus you will lose this $100 as well. That loss is also a cost for you. Therefore, you should add that 100 to this 200 as well. Clear now? So you can see here, the full cost of attending the concert is the price of the ticket and the income foregone. So when we are considering the income foregone, we are only considering the highest income foregone. So it should be 200, that is the price of the ticket, plus 100 is the income foregone, the highest income foregone, that is option number 3. Therefore, total of $300. You know, inshallah, I hope it's clear for you as well.
Okay, sir. Good.
So let's move forward to identify the production probability curve. So what do you mean by production probability curve? Actually, in the production probability curve, it is a graphical representation of the alternative combinations of goods or maybe services an economy can produce. So whatever the economy can produce, either we can produce goods or services. So the production probability curve is representing it graphically of all the alternative combinations of the goods and services we can produce. It basically illustrates the production probabilities model. We have a model called as production possibilities model. So when we are drawing this production probability curve, we should assume that the economy can produce only two goods, and that the quantities of the factors of production and the technology available to the economy are fixed. So that is a basic assumption that we are using when you draw in the production probability curve. We assume that the economy can produce only two goods or services, and that quantities of the factors of production as well as the technology available is a fixed one. So we are assuming those two and then graphically representing the production possibilities of those two alternatives. So in order to get a proper idea on this one, let's first move on to a case study. Let's assume company A is specialized in furniture. So that particular company has begun 15 years ago with a single factory. So company A is specialized in furniture, and it has been started 15 years back with a single factory. And then later the sales grew, and the owner of the company noticed that the demand for the woodcraft is also rising. So apart from the furniture, he has noticed that the demand of the wooden crafts are also rising. So he decided to add a second plant in a nearby town. So that second plant is smaller than the first one, but he has designed it to produce both house furniture as well as the wooden craft. So in the second plant, he is producing the furniture as well as the woodcraft. Later, he also modified the first plant so that it could produce both house furniture and the woodcraft. So now plant A and plant B. So the first plant and the second plant of company A can produce both furniture and the woodcraft. 2 years later, he had a third plant as well. But this third plant is in another town. While even smaller than the second plant, this third plant was primarily designed only for the woodcraft. But it can also produce house furniture if needed. So this is the case. We have a company which actually began 15 years back, and once the sales grew, he decided to add another plant which can produce both woodcraft and the furniture. So later he has modified the first plant also in order to produce both furniture and woodcraft. Later he has added another plant which is smaller than the second plant, but still it is primarily designed for the woodcraft, but it can also produce the house furniture as well. So in case he can produce all three, he can use all three plants to produce house furniture as well as the woodcrafts. So for this particular case, if we draw a diagram having the x-axis of woodcraft per month and the y-axis of furniture per month. Remember, production probability curve, we have an assumption. We can only assume, we should assume that we can only produce two goods at a particular time. In this case, the two goods should be furniture and the woodcraft. So therefore, our x-axis should be the woodcraft per month. Our y-axis should be the furniture per month. And at the same time, when we are drawing the production probability curve, we should assume that the quantities of factors of production, so all the factors of production as well as the technology available for the production is fixed to both x and the y-axis. That means to both woodcrafts and the furnitures. Is it clear? So we are trying to draw a production probability curve for this particular case. In that case, we know that we can only draw a production probability curve for two alternative products or two products. So here we have two products. One is the house furniture and the other is the woodcraft. So we should choose x-axis for one product and the y-axis for other product. And we should assume that all the factors of production and the technology is fixed for both of these production. That's why we have three plants, and all three plants can be utilized to produce the woodcraft as well as the furniture. So the technology available in all three plants will be fixed. So by assuming this thing, I can draw a diagram like this, and these numerical values also we get from the case. So in point A, it simply shows us if we utilize all plants only to furniture production. So if we utilize all three plants only for the furniture production, we can produce 200 furnitures. But we will not be able to produce any wood crafts if we utilize all three plants for the furniture production. So in case A, you can see the furnitures per month is higher, that is 200. Don't worry about these numerical values. This is related to the case, not a fixed value. This is in relation with the case that we are referring to. So if we utilize all three plants for the furniture production, then we can produce 200 furnitures per month. But we will not be able to produce any wood crafts per month if we utilize all three plants for the furniture production. In case B, if we utilize the plants for both, all three plants for both furniture and the woodcraft production, then we will be able to produce 100 furnitures per month. At the same time, 50 woodcrafts per month. And on the other hand, case number C, if we utilize all three plants for the woodcraft production only, then we will not be able to produce any furnitures per month, but we'll be able to produce 100 woodcrafts per month. So these are three scenarios of this case. Either we can produce all three, either we can utilize all three plants for the furniture production, or all three plants for the woodcraft production, as well as we can utilize both. We can utilize all three plants for the both type of production, furniture and the woodcraft. So you can see a negative slope on this production possibilities curve. Negative slope in the sense we have a slope in this way. If it is a slope in other way, it will be a positive slope. Since we have a negative slope here, the curve reflects the scarcity of the plant's capital and labor. It basically reflecting the scarcity of the plant's capital as well as the labor. So if you remember, what does that mean by scarcity? Can you put your answer in the chat? What is scarcity? We learned it in the last lecture. Scarcity. What is scarcity? Yes, exactly. Limited resources for unlimited wants. So in this slope, the negative slope of this production probability curve, it simply reflects the scarcity of the plant's capital and the labor. So we have limited capital as well as limited labor. Producing more wood crops require more resources, shifting from furniture to the woodcraft production. So if we produce more wood crops, what happens is we can produce fewer number of furniture because we should shift resources to the woodcraft production. Producing more furniture will require shifting resources from woodcraft to the production of furniture. So it will also resulted in reducing fewer number of producing fewer number of wood crops. So since we have limited resources in terms of capital and the labor, if we focus on a particular production, either furniture or woodcraft, then if we focused on higher amount of furniture, then we will reduce the number of woodcrafts we can produce. If you focus on producing more number of woodcrafts, then we can produce only few number of furniture per month. That is why we have a negative curve in this production possibility curve. We have a negative slope basically. If we try to understand this concept, to further have a better understanding on this regard, we can draw production possibility curves for 3 plants separately. So in the previous scenario, we have a common production possibility curve for all 3 plants. This is for all 3 plants. Now we are drawing the production possibility curve for 3 plants separately. So for plant number 1, plant number 2, and plant number 3. All 3 plants can be utilized to produce both furniture and woodcraft. Therefore, we will have the same sort of negative slope for all 3 plants. The only thing is the intensity of the slope may be different based on the plant size. So let's say if we devoted entirely to woodcraft, so if we have decided to produce woodcrafts using all 3 plants, so we'll be able to produce 100 woodcrafts from the first plant, 100 woodcrafts from the second plant, as well as 100 woodcrafts from the third plant. And if we devoted exclusively to furniture, so if we only producing furniture using all 3 plants, so in the first plant we'll be able to produce 200 furnitures because it is initially introduced to produce furniture, and later it has been used to produce woodcraft as well. And the plant number 2, it was intentionally built up to produce both furniture and the woodcraft with the same capacity. Therefore, it has the capacity of 100 woodcrafts per month if it is utilized only for woodcraft production, and it has the capacity of 100 furnitures per month if it is reduced only for furniture production. But for plant number 1, it is a different scenario because it is initially introduced to produce furniture. Therefore, if it is utilized only for furniture, it has the capacity of 200 furnitures per month. But later it has been expanded to produce woodcrafts as well. In that case, if it only utilized for woodcraft production, it has the capacity to produce only 100 woodcrafts per month. It cannot produce 200 woodcrafts per month, even though it is utilized only for woodcraft production. But for plant number 3, you can see if it is utilized only for furniture production, then it can only produce 50 furnitures per month because intentionally the plant number 3 is designed for woodcraft production, but it still can use for the furniture production. Even though if we utilize it for only for furniture production, still we can only produce 50 furnitures per month. On the other hand, if we utilize the plant number 3 for woodcraft production only, it has the capacity of producing 100 woodcraft a month. So this basically exhibit by the negative slope of the production possibility curves for each plant. So if you look into the production possibility curve of the plant number 1, you have a slope of -2. If the slope is negatively high, that in the sense we have a higher production rate for the y-axis. If the slope is less than 1, negatively less than 1 or negatively lower, then we have a higher production rate for the plant number 3 or the x-axis. If we have a -1 slope, that means we have a similar capacity to produce furniture as well as the wood top. So similar rate of production can be seen in the x-axis as well as y-axis if the slope is -1. If the slope is greater than, less than -1, that means slope is -2. Less than -1 is less than, -2. Then we have a higher capacity for the y-axis, lower capacity for the x-axis. But if the slope is greater than -1, that means 0.5 or somewhere between -1 and 0, then we have a higher capacity for the x-axis while lower capacity for the y-axis. Is it clear how to interpret this particular diagram? Any questions? You may have some questions. Is it clear for you? Is it clear in the sense that you should be able to interpret a production possibility curve if it is given in an assignment or an exam? So if you are asked to describe what this production possibility curve reflects, you should be able to describe it clearly. Can you confirm whether it is clear or not? Yes, Sanjay. Okay. So starting with the common curve, here, this is the curve for all 3 plants together. And to elaborate it further, we can have the production possibility curve for all the 3 plants separately. So if we consider plant number 1, as per the introduction given in the case study, the plant number 1 was the first plant first plant that they have built up. Initially, it was built up to produce furniture. Later, it has been expanded to produce the wood crafts as well. So since it initially built up to produce furniture, it has a higher capacity to produce furniture in the first plant. But when it comes to the, when the market expanded for wood crafts, the owner has decided to expand its production for the wood crafts. So still the woodcraft production cannot be achieved, like cannot reach the production level of furniture. It can't reach the production level of 200 in the x-axis because it is initially only designed to furniture production. So obviously it has a higher production rate for furniture. But when it comes to plant number 2, the intention was to produce both furniture and wood crafts at the same time. Therefore, it has the same capacity to produce furniture as well as the wood crafts. So it has a maximum capacity of furniture of 100 as well as wood crafts of 100 as well. That in the sense, what it means is if you only produce furniture using plant number 2, you can produce 100 furnitures. Or else if you only produce wood crafts using plant number 2, you can only produce 100 wood crafts. Plant number 3 is intentionally introduced to produce wood crafts, but still it has the capacity to produce furniture, but not in a rate similar to the wood crafts. So the maximum wood crafts that it can be produced if it is only utilized for woodcraft production is 100. But if it is only utilized for furniture production, it can only produce 50 furniture per month. So that is the main idea behind these production possibility curves. And the other main important thing is if you utilize these plants for both furniture production and the woodcraft production, you can see here, if plant number 1 is used to produce furniture and woodcraft, we can produce 100 furnitures and 50 woodcrafts per month. If plant number 2 is utilized to produce furniture and woodcraft, we can produce 50 furniture and 50 woodcrafts per month because it has the same capacity for both productions. If you utilize plant number 3 for both productions, you can only produce 25 furniture and 50 woodcrafts. So altogether, if you utilize all 3 plants for both production, you have the capacity of producing 100 plus 50 plus 25 furnitures per month. That means 175 furnitures per month. While 50 plus 50 plus 50 woodcrafts per month. That means 150 woodcrafts per month. Clear now? Okay. So we were talking about some production or the productivity related things. So the production possibility curve simply reflects the how we can like the difference between producing two alternatives if the factors of production and the technology is a fixed factor for both production. So let's move on to the productivity. So what do you think? What sort of factors are influencing the productivity? We are assuming the factors of production is fixed for both of these production possibilities in these particular diagrams. So there we have discussed something called as factors of production. So what are the influencing factors for this productivity? Any suggestions? An open-ended question, you can have any idea. What are the factors influencing the productivity? In particular, productivity of an economy or a sector, what are the factors influencing? So you can put your answers in the chat. What do you think? What are the factors that should affect the productivity of a sector? Yes, machine efficiency. We can say the quality of the resources, the machinery. Yes. What else? Employee wellness. Yes. Maybe the education level, the training of the labor force. Yes. Quality of workers. What else? Technology used. Okay. Again comes under the resources. Number of workers, that in the sense labor force. Yes. Processes they use. Yes. That is again coming under the resources or maybe the technology. Anything else? So all in all, if we let's say if we try to summarize these factors or the answers that you have given, there are a number of factors that can influence the productivity of economy or a sector. We can summarize them into the natural and man-made resources. The natural and man-made resources in the quality wise as well as the quantity wise. So if it is quantity wise, the number of machines we have, number of particular resources we have, the quality wise, whatever the technology we used, whatever the quality of the resources. So likewise, we can categorize them under the quality and the quantity of the natural and man-made resources. Then we can also categorize them under the quality and the extent of the education as well as the training of the labor force. So the level of labor force we have, what is the level of education they have, what is the level of training they have received, likewise the quality and the extent of the labor force. And also we can categorize them the level of expectation of the laborers or and the company as well as the motivation and the well-being. So what is the expectation level, what is the motivation level and the well-being level of the labor force. Finally, we can have the commitment to research and development. This is very important. How extent we are committed to the research and development inside the plant or the economy. Apart from these, we can have some other factors as well, but these four are the main factors which are influencing the productivity of the economy. Are we clear? So all your answers are correct. All of your answers can be categorized under these category broadly. What if I ask you if you ever had if you ever happened to heard a word called as economy of scale? What is economies of scale? Why do we need economies of scale? What do you mean by economies of scale, or maybe why do we need economies of scale? Do you have any answer for that question? Can you answer this question? What is economies of scale, or why do economies of scale exist? Why do we need them? Yes, can I see your answers in the chat? Any answers? I'll keep that question for your end, maybe at homework. I might. Yes. Cost is decreasing with the increasing of production. Okay. Let's keep it for your, let's say you need to find some articles on these economies of scale and just try to give an elaborative answer, like descriptive answer for this one. I might take it as a assignment for your course, and like it's a very like very easy one, but still you need to need to have a very descriptive answer for this one. What is economies of scale and why do economies of scale exist? You can use whatever the resources, but still you need to use some legitimate citations to get a proper answer for this particular question, not a single paragraph answer, not a single sentence answer, a descriptive one. What I need is a descriptive answer for this particular question. What is economies of scale and why do economies of scale exist? So you can share this question with the people who are absent today as well. And I need to have the answers for this question in a Word format, Word file in the next class with your names and the index numbers. So I will collect them within the class. I mean, you can send your answer scripts to the chat in the next class and I'll mark them and keep it as an assignment for the first assignment, an initial one with a, let's say 5 marks or very small amount of marks as an introductory assignment for this particular module. Clear? Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now? I'm actually conducting the lecture at the office, that's why. So the question that I have put in the chat, you need to come up with a very descriptive answer for these two questions by researching some articles through internet or maybe any other resources. I have recommended you some books for this particular module as well. And you need to submit that particular answer in a Word format in the next class. So I'll take it as the first assignment for this particular module. What is economies of scale? Why do economies of scale exist? I don't need a single sentence answer. I need a descriptive answer by researching several resources. And please mention what are the resources that you have referred as well. Are we clear? Is it clear, guys? Nandagaram, is it clear? Yes, okay. It's a very introductory kind of an assignment, not a very big one. We will have we will progress with the assignments in the future classes as well. So let's move on to the new lesson. So far we were discussing on the background of the economics and in terms of building economics. So let's move on to the second lesson of our module, which is regarding the economic context of the buildings. So in this lesson, economic context of the building, we have three main contexts that we need to discuss. Three main contexts of economics or the economic context of buildings. Those are the materials, the labor, and the physical capital. These are the three main economic contexts of buildings. First one is the material, second one is the labor, and the third one is the physical capital. So if you consider material, what do we mean by materials? Any idea? What are the materials of a building? I mean, what are defined as materials? Any definition that you can give for materials? What are materials? What do you think? What are the materials of a building? I mean, not like, no, not not examples for materials, but kind of a definition for material. What do you define as materials in the building industry? There may be several definitions in several textbooks or several resources. In your opinion, what do you think as a material for building construction? What are materials? Okay, we received an answer from Ilakshya. Materials are physical matters that used to build, finish, and decorate buildings and construction works. Yes, somewhat similar answer, somewhat correct answer. Any other answers? The things that we use to make something. Thing and something, not that exact terms. Man-made objects or some naturally available things. Don't use the term things here. Things might have different meanings. Instead of things, you can use the term items even. So basically in building construction, in terms of the building economics, what we defined as materials are, either we can say it as raw materials for the construction work, usually include the tangible items. Tangible items in the sense, we can touch them and we can feel them. We can touch, it has the touch and feel. So the raw materials for the construction work usually include the tangible items which are used to manufacture the end product. We are using these tangible items or the raw materials to manufacture our end products. If you are using any tangible item to manufacture an end product, we call them as a material. That is a one definition for these materials. Otherwise, the materials for construction building is also identified as the budgetary items. Budgetary line items in the sense we can give them a value in the budget. So the materials for construction building is also identified as the budgetary line items. That in the sense we can give a monetary value for those items. We can measure the value of that item in terms of the monetary system. Another definition says, all three definitions are from three resources, but all three definitions are giving an exact idea of what do we identified as a material. The third one says the direct raw materials, which are basically the items which can be tracked easily as a part of the end product. So once we build the end product, let's say for an example of a building project or maybe a column or a beam. So once we constructed or once we built up that particular end product, whatever the items which can be tracked easily are direct raw materials. So materials, mainly we can identify them as the budgetary line items, the items which can give a monetary value in the budget. Whatever the raw material that we used in the construction work, which are tangible, which we can use to manufacture our end products, are identified as materials in the building construction industry. Are we clear on that particular definition? Any questions, any clarifications? So materials are the first economic concept of buildings. There, we try to define what are the materials here. So are we clear with the definition of the materials as the first context of, economic context of buildings? It seems no questions regarding the definition of materials. Am I correct? Moving forward for the second economic context of buildings, that is the labor. So the labor in construction projects can be categorized into two main categories as direct labor and the indirect labor. But what do we refer as direct labor is the labor that is directly involved in the construction projects. So there are labor which are directly involved in the construction projects, and at the same time there are people who are indirectly involved with the construction projects. Those are the indirect labor. In this regard, the labor does not mean only the minor level staff. It includes the engineers as well as the managers as well. All the the labor force is included under this labor. The direct labor refers to the labor that is directly involved in the construction project, while the indirect labor are not directly involved in the construction project, but still they are also useful for the success of the project. There are assembly laborers that put together the products, build the foundations, the engineers for quality control, who tests the construction work in every phase of the project, architects designing the architecture or the infrastructure of the project, warehouse workers and the people constructing the building, all of them are categorized under the direct labor of a product, direct labor of a construction project or the building construction. So direct labor refers to the labor that is directly involved with the project. For an example, the engineers, the workers who are working the architects, structural designers, whatever the people who are directly involved with the project. On the other hand, the indirect laborers, the laborers that work not directly on the construction site, but still they are involved in the development, maybe the shipment of raw materials, maybe manufacturing the raw materials likewise. So for an example, if we take a building construction site, the direct laborers, we know all the people who are directly involved with the site. The indirect laborers can be, we can assume the people who are working on the cement plants or the ready mix plants. Those are not directly involved with the site, but still their work is important for the construction site as well. On the other hand, the support staffs of the construction companies, like the HR team, the security officers, the administrative team, those are also indirect labor. Even though they are not directly involved with the construction project, they are still indirectly involved with our project. Are we clear with the difference between this direct and indirect labor as the second economic context of buildings? Clear? Any questions that you need to clarify? Can you confirm whether this is clear for you or not? If you have any questions, any clarifications? Any questions, any clarifications? Am I audible for you? Is it clear now? Thank you, Anthony. Okay, next we will move on how to calculate the cost of this labor and the material in terms of construction projects. So whatever the expenses of labor for construction work are highly adjustable than the material cost. We know that we can't adjust the material cost. The material cost is mostly fixed. So we can't, we can't, for an example, we can't adjust the cost of cement in construction. It is a fixed amount of cost. But the only thing we can adjust is the expenses for the labor force. So any building would require the same amount of raw materials. So for any building construction work, let's say we are constructing a particular typical two-story houses. So any two-story house, there's a requirement of same amount of raw materials, basic materials. And the individual parts, irrespective of how long it takes to build. We don't mind whether it is built up from 1 month or taking 2 months or 1 year, whatever it is, we will still need the same amount of raw materials for the building construction, a particular building construction. But the only thing we can easily adjust is the labor cost. So if we have decided to build our building with a minimum amount of time, that means the cost of labor will be reduced. Even though we have decided to build up our building with a minimum amount of time, it will not reduce the material cost. It will only reduce the labor cost. So the labor cost can easily be adjusted by constructing efficient building methods, by using efficient methods of building construction and having the laborers to work or not work overtime, whether we are allowing them to work overtime or not work overtime, and by deciding the amount of quality required for the building project. So we can simply adjust the labor cost in the building construction rather than adjusting the raw material costs. Since this labor cost is very flexible compared to the material costs, when the construction owner or the company needs to do some cost cutting, it is necessary for the construction work. We know that the cost cutting is a necessary thing to construction work in order to make profits. So they are always targeted on the labor force by the construction company because that is the most flexible part of the construction work, that we can do some adjustments in terms of cost. We anyway can't adjust the cost of raw materials. We can only adjust the cost of labor by deciding the amount of labor allocated for a particular project and the amount of time it has been allocated. Are we clear? This is a very important concept on this particular scenario. Are we clear? Okay. Since it's clear, since those students have confirmed, let's move on to a more precise definition on these labels and the material. So how to calculate this labor cost in terms of construction projects and the material cost in terms of construction projects. In the labor cost wise, every construction company must have a clear picture of how much direct and how much indirect labor costs them, and to find out how much it costs them per day to get a job done. You also need to find out how long the construction work would take to get complete and multiply it by the labor cost per day to find the exact figure you need to spend on the construction work. So the labor cost also deals with the number of workers working on the site as well as the number of days it required to work. This must not only include the hourly wages, we should consider the insurance, maybe the taxes, overtime, labor's comp, and other related costs. We should not calculate the labor cost only by deciding the hourly wages. We should consider whatever the insurance that we should have, because we know that in order to have some laborers working on a construction site, we should have a particular insurance for them as a company. So we should incorporate those costs as well. Overtime or maybe taxes, EPF, ETF, etc. All the things should be calculated when we are calculating the labor cost in construction projects. The subcontractor labor costs must also be included and identify what and who you need for the project. So that's why mainly the main contractors are going to subcontractors, mainly for the labor supply. So they are only taking the service of a subcontract. So they can only consider the wages or the hourly wages that they are recommending, because all the other these insurance schemes and all should be covered by those subcontractors. You need to take the estimates into account. So whatever the estimates given by the subcontractors should also taken into account when calculating the total cost of a building project. In material wise, the material costs usually include both direct and indirect materials. The direct materials are steel, concrete, wood, and whatever the materials directly involved with the project. So similar to the labor, materials can also be categorized as direct material and indirect material. The direct materials are the materials which are directly involved with the construction project, and the indirect materials are mostly the incidental materials, but are like screws, nails, fasteners, and all. So we can't say this is the number of screws or nuts, nails we need for a particular work. So those are indirect materials. The equipment and the tools that we use or that we lease for the project can also be considered as an indirect material. We all know that we are leasing some scaffoldings for construction projects. In mostly, if it is not a very high scale construction company, most of the other companies are leasing those materials for their construction work. So those leasing of scaffolding and other materials or other equipments and tools can also be taken as indirect material for the particular construction project. Some of the contractors are also including the potential wastages. We know that we can't use all the materials 100% for the construction project. There will be some wastages. What we can do is minimize those wastages and take the optimum use of the materials that we have. So those wastages, the potential wastages and the material delivery charges can also be taken as the indirect cost for construction project. Are we clear on this labor and the material, how to calculate these costs in terms of construction projects? Any questions? Is it no questions or not engaged with the lecture? Do you have any questions? Anything that you need to clarify? Okay, thank you, Vasan. If I ask you, what are the modes of employment that you have seen in the construction work? You can see here. There will be always a main contractor for any building construction work. So that main contractor might have direct employees as well as self-employees who are working for main contractor. So If we consider the main contractor, there will be direct employees who are working there at that company, as well as there can be some self-employed operators who are working for the main contractor. They will not be direct employees of that particular main contractor, but they are self-employed operators who are working for that particular main contractor. On the other hand, that main contractor can give the subcontracts for different subcontracting firms. So those subcontracting firms can also have the direct employees working for them, as well as the self-employed operators who are working for that particular subcontractor. So this is how normally a construction work is going on. So main contractor will be there. There will be people who are directly working for the main contractor, as well as self-employed operators who are working for the main contractor. On the other hand, the main contractor can give it for subcontractors, and those subcontractors will also have direct employees who are working for them, as well as self-employed operators who are working for that particular subcontractor as well. This is the structure of the employment in building construction industry. So if I ask you, the third economic context of buildings, the physical capital. So far we learned about the materials and the labor as the first two economic context of building constructions. What do you think about the physical capital? What do you mean by the physical capital? What is physical capital? Any answer? I don't mind whether your answers are correct or wrong. Just an attempt. What is physical capital? We have received an answer from Pasan, land or construction area. Any other comments? Any other answers? Okay, we are receiving some answers here. Tangible human-made goods involves construction. Okay. And we have another answer saying physical capital is the apparatus used to produce a good and services. Physical capital represents the tangible man-made goods that help and support production. Okay, it seems it's a Googled answer. Anyway, good attempt. Man-made items. In economic theory, actually the physical capital is the one of these main three factors of production, which we consider as material, labor, and the physical capital. It consists of, as you said, tangible and man-made objects that a company can buy or a company can invest in order to use to produce some goods. So whatever the tangible man-made objects that a company can buy or invest in, and then the company can use them to produce goods. Here, the physical capital consists of tangible man-made objects that a company buys or invests in order to use them to produce goods. So those items can include manufacturing equipment, as you said, and it also falls under to the category of fixed capital. We have fixed capital Under the category of fixed capital also, we can consider these physical capital items, meaning that they are reusable. If it is a fixed capital, that in the sense we can reuse them. So they are reusable. These physical capital items are also reusable, and they are not consumed during the production process. So we can reuse them for another production as well. For an example, okay, we have a question here. Who are self-employed operators? Okay. Self-employed operators in the sense, those operators are not direct employees of the company. Maybe there might be people who are working on contracts. Maybe there might be people who are working, like, let's say, not the company employees. How to give an example there? Okay, something like this. There are people in the building construction industry. There are people, let's say masons. There are masons and their supporting staffs who are not direct employees of the company, but they are working with the company for a long time. So if a company has a project, they call for that particular mason and the staff, their supporting staff, and get the things done by themselves. So they're working for maybe for the, let's say maybe for hourly wage, sorry, daily wages, or maybe for a square feet price, like the measurements based on their product, the final product. They do not have a fixed salary. Like, let's say they do not have a fixed salary, fixed monthly salary. Instead, they have a salary based on their work. They are working with that particular company for a longer period. They are working for based on their their productivity, or based on their final outcome. They do not have a fixed salary in the month end. Did I answer your question? Okay, great. So we were talking about the physical capital, and you had several answers, and most of those answers are correct. The machinery, the buildings, the office complexes, warehouses, vehicles, and the computers that we used in the constructions, which are owned by the company, are all considered as part of its physical capital. Whatever the item, the tangible items which are man-made, that we can use them to produce goods, are categorized as physical capital in the construction projects. Are we clear on the physical capitals as well? Yes, okay. So in terms of this economical context of building construction, the main three aspects are materials, labor, and the physical capital. We have a competition on all of these three items. We have a competition on the materials, we have competition for the labor, and for the physical capital. So we know that we have several alternative sources that we can supply materials, that we can get the supply of labor and the physical capital. So there will be a competition among them. The most important effect of this combination of technical innovations and the scale is on the structure of the industry itself, and it is through that on the nature of the competition. So whatever the price or whatever the quality of these three economical context of building construction will depend on the nature of the competition that they have on their regard. Let's say, for an example, the need for expensive capital equipment to exploit innovation and the existence of the scale of economies. Again, that scale of economies comes into play. That's why I just asked you to research on what is scale of economies and why do scale of economies exist, because it is very important in the production of goods and services, as well as in terms of the main three economic contexts of building construction industries as well. So what happens if the small companies cannot afford the competition of the material labor, the physical capital is, the bigger companies or the larger companies will take them over. So what happens when the small companies cannot withstand with the competition is the larger companies comes into play and they will take over those small companies into them. So there's a huge relationship with these economies of scale in these regards. That is a very important thing. That's why actually I just asked you to do this particular thing, do this research kind of thing with regard to the economies of scale and why it is existing in the industry, to have a better understanding on the future concepts of this lesson. So I'll repeat that question in the chat. What is economies of scale? Why do economies of scale exist? I'd like to see a proper descriptive answer from all of you in the next class. Please ask your friends who are not present today to provide these answer scripts in the next class as well, and ask them to attend the lectures as well. We have only 50 participants today. The people who are not attending the class will not be able to cover everything through the lecture notes and the recordings. Because once you engage with the lecture, once you ask questions, once you get involved with the answering processes, and if you are not clarified with anything, if you are not clear with anything, you can ask them anytime. Those things should be there in a lecture as well. Anything that you need to clarify regarding today's lecture, since we have come to the end of the notes? We have a couple of minutes, so you can ask any questions that you have that you need to clarify regarding this, either in today's lecture or maybe last week lecture. I don't mind. Any questions? Just go through the notes and let me know whether you have anything that you need to clarify before winding up the session. Nothing to be clarified or clear? Is there anything that we need to discuss further? Or can we wind up the session? Please respond. Okay, please work on the simple question that I have provided and try to get a very descriptive answer individually. It should not be the same answer from everyone. It should be an individual answer by referring to several resources that are available in the internet or maybe any other resources. And please notify whatever the citations that you have used, and end of the answer, end of the paper, you can put the references if you have referred several. I don't expect a very very report kind of a thing for this thing, but at least a one paper should be there in your submission. Thank you for your cooperation, guys. So we'll wind up the session for today and we'll be again meeting on next Tuesday for the next lesson. Until then, have a nice day.